The alarm on the underwater research station, the Nautilus 7, was a sharp wail that cut through the oppressive silence of the deep Pacific Ocean. 700 meters below the surface, where sunlight was a distant memory, the habitat I'd called home for 2 years trembled. It wasn't an earthquake or a structural failure. It was something deeper, older. I was Dr. Lena Petrova, an astrobiologist by training, but in the depths, my studies had shifted to extremophile life and, more recently, to the strange energy patterns detected in the Mariana Trench. 6 months ago, our sensors had picked up regular, mathematically perfect pulses coming from an unexplored trench. Ignoring orders from the surface to prioritize mineral resource research. My team, lead engineer David Chen, pragmatic and cautious, and oceanographer Dr. Anya Sharma, with her passion for ancient myths, had diverted the Nautilus 7 to investigate. The initial readings left us bewildered. It wasn't geological, nor biological. It was artificial. But impossibly ancient. We decided to dive deeper, against common sense and protocol. And then we found it. Not a trench, but a submerged city. The ruins were made of a material I had never seen, a type of black basalt that absorbed light, making it almost invisible until we were directly above it. The structures were vast, cyclopean, rising into impossible towers that defied the laws of hydrodynamics. At its center, a colossal spiral construction, which seemed to pulse with a faint internal light, emitted the energy pulses that had drawn us in. It was a place that should never have been disturbed. It was David who noticed the anomalies first. The ship's systems began to fail randomly, lights flickered, communicators hissed with static that wasn't just noise, and navigation systems displayed impossible coordinates. "Lena, something is interfering with our systems," he reported, his voice tight. "It's not a power surge. It's like physics itself is." Bending around those ruins, Anya, meanwhile, grew increasingly fascinated and concerned. She spent days studying the bas-relief pictograms on the city's outer walls, symbols that seemed to have a life of their own. "They're not hieroglyphs," she once murmured, "they're diagrams of forces that don't belong in our universe. And this place, it's a type of seal. A prison." Her eyes, usually so focused, seemed lost in a distant vision. She began having vivid dreams, whispers in an impossible language, and woke with purple bruises on her wrists, as if she had thrashed in her sleep. I started to notice the change in David too. He became increasingly withdrawn, muttering to himself about resonant frequencies and space-time curves. I found him one night in the engine room, tinkering with exposed wires with a wrench. "I'm hearing a song," he said, not looking at me. "A song coming from the city. It's beautiful. If I can just tune into it." My own mind was under assault. The whispers Anya mentioned began to permeate my waking thoughts, not as audible voices, but as impressions, feelings. A deep melancholy, an ancient hunger, an overwhelming understanding of human insignificance. I began to see patterns in the scales of abyssal fish, in the air bubbles rising to the surface, patterns that were replicated in the city's symbols. The fractured reality wasn't just out there, it was seeping in. The crisis erupted when Anya tried to activate one of the obelisks in the city's central plaza. She had spent days deciphering a sequence of symbols and was convinced it was a key. I tried to stop her, but the obsession in her eyes was undeniable. The moment she touched the obelisk, a pulse of energy erupted from the city. It wasn't an explosion, but a wave that distorted the very water around us. The Nautilus 7 systems collapsed completely. Lights went out, communication with the surface was severed, and the silence was broken only by the groaning of the hull under pressure. Worse yet, the wave revealed the truth. The city's structures weren't just constructions. They were alive. A vast organic mechanical entity, dormant in the depths for eons. The song David heard was not a melody, but the frequency of its liberation. The city was a creature, and what Anya had activated was its awakening. David fully lost his mind. He began shouting about the chorus of the void and the perfect connection. He tried to drill through the Nautilus 7's hull with a maintenance drill, convinced we needed to join the song. I had to knock him out with the butt of a fire extinguisher. Meanwhile, the submerged city began to shift. The pulsating light at its center intensified, and the outer structures seemed to writhe and expand, as if breathing. From newly formed openings in its walls, nightmarish creatures emerged, amorphous silhouettes of tentacles and multiple eyes, made of a dark, gelatinous substance that moved with impossible speed in the water. They didn't seem to want to attack us, but rather, to invite us. With the ship damaged, escape was impossible. I had to think fast. The song was growing, not just in the environment, but in my mind. It was a promise of unity, of unlimited knowledge, of peace through dissolution. But I knew it was a lie. It was the song of the void, drawing everything into its non-existence. I remembered Anya's whispers about the seal, and David's equations about resonant frequencies. We couldn't destroy the entity, but perhaps we could silence it. While David was unconscious and Anya was immersed in her own trance, I began to work frantically. I used the remnants of our power and the few systems still functional, combining what Eris had taught me about psionics with David's last notes on the city's frequency. My idea was to create a psychic and sonic pulse that would disrupt the song's frequency, turning harmony into discord, attraction into repulsion. It was a blind effort, based on intuition and growing madness. The pressure was immense, not just from the water, but from the creature's presence. I felt its primitive thoughts, its hunger, its satisfaction in drawing us in. Every beat of the song was a nail hammered into my sanity. Finally, with the last wire connected, I activated the pulse. The ship shuddered violently. There was no explosion, but a shockwave that reverberated through the water. The song in my head transformed into a high-pitched, unbearable scream that lasted only an instant before it broke. The pulsating light in the city diminished. The amorphous forms that had emerged from it shrank and retreated back into the openings. The submerged city did not disappear, but the life, the song, the energy radiating from it, all subsided to a distant, almost inaudible whisper. The seal had been patched, not perfectly, but enough so that the void song could no longer reach us. The Nautilus 7 was in ruins, but silent, drifting aimlessly. David and Anya slowly began to come to. Their eyes were vacant, their memories of the past few days fragmented and distorted, a side effect of the psychic interference that I hoped would be permanent for them. It would be a high price, but necessary for sanity. We never reached the surface with the Nautilus 7. We were rescued weeks later by a search mission, found in an emergency escape pod, with a story of equipment failure and pressure-induced illusions. The story of the submerged city, of the Song of the Void, stayed with me. The others recovered, but never completely. David returned to engineering but avoided silence. Anya became a librarian, obsessed with ancient texts but with no recollection of what she saw. They are safe from the void, but the truth is a burden that I, the only one to fully comprehend, must carry alone. Now, I live a quiet life on the surface, a retired scientist with a scarred mind. But at night, when the world is silent, I still hear a subtle hum, a faint melody that echoes from the depths. The void was not destroyed, only silenced. And I know the seal will not last forever. My vigil continues, a solitary guardian against the return of the song that seeks to transform reality into oblivion.